I feel like Tua Tagovailoa is the NFL's version of Julius Randle. You're talking about two of the more endearing star players, elite college prospects that suffered career-altering injuries, went on to become all-star or Pro Bowl caliber players in new environments. But every single year, in the biggest moments, in playoff crucibles, they actually fall apart because of their own biggest strength. It sounds counterintuitive to say it, but Tua Tagovailoa, his best asset is his accuracy as a quarterback. But it's also his anticipation, right? The ability to make a throw in a second and a half on a dime in a tight window, perfectly on time for Tyreek Hill to get a 60-yard gain. But when you look at him in these high-leverage December games where he struggles in the cold weather, you notice he predetermines all of his reads. He knows where he's going with the ball pre-snap, and it makes him a very predictable player. Opposing defensive coordinators, linebackers, and safeties pick up on his tendencies knowing what is going to be his first read. I think back to his final play, one of his final plays last night's game versus the Chiefs, where it's a wide receiver screen to Tyreek Hill, and a Chief player throws his hand warmers in the spot Tyreek is motioning. I think that was intentional because they knew the play, they knew the concept that the Dolphins were running. But overall, you look at that Dolphin game and it's like, because Tua Tagovailoa predetermines his reads before the snap, and sometimes he can't make a play when the structure is not there, it makes him a very predictable player who is not that much of a good player in the postseason. That's a kind of way to put it. In September, it's those strengths that makes Tua look like a baby version of Phillip Rivers. But in the biggest moments in December and January, it turns him into Jimmy Garoppolo, but a worse version. And that is hard to say. On the other hand of Julius Randle, you see him in November, January, and March hit tough game winners on crazy controlled fadeaways, going one-on-one, being an isolation shot creator, which is not that translatable to the postseason, at least in past years, because his game was so dependent on tough shot making. And quite frankly, it's not that consistent when you've got Evan Mobley in your grill, contesting your shot as well as anybody possibly can. I think these two players are almost an example of like the little engine that could in sports. Julius Randle was the first Knicks star since Carmelo Anthony. Tua Tagovailoa is the first Dolphins quarterback that gave fans hope they could go on a playoff run since Dan Marino in quite some time. But you look at their play styles and how limited they are, but how dependent they are on that one resounding style that it really does come back to bite them when it matters. And it makes them very hard to win a championship with. I root for both of these guys, and I think maybe this year Julius Randle evolving his game to be more of a bruising power forward can make him a guy that can play well in the playoffs, make him less predictable. But for Tua Tagovailoa, I can't get off that comparison, because no matter how well he plays in September and October, it doesn't matter if he crumbles in the last 2 months of every single season. And it's been a trend dating back to his rookie year. If I'm the Miami Dolphins, I have to look at upgrading because the roster around him is fantastic. Raheem Mostert, a star. Jalen Warren and Tyreek Hill, stars. Mike McDaniel getting a ton of the blame. Why? His quarterback can't throw in the Colts. Every time it's beyond 5 yards, it's a turnover-worthy play, it feels like, in tough conditions. Mike McDaniel has maximized Tua Tagovailoa and helped resurrect his career. He's done everything to build an elite rushing attack without a great offensive line and a really good receiving game, but he can't trust his quarterback to make decisions when the structure is not there. There's only so much a quarterback can do. On the touchdown he threw to Tyreek Hill, Tyreek burns Trent McDuffie, but Tua underthrows him. Tyreek has to make a tight turn back onto the ball. It's a 50-50 ball. McDuffie doesn't turn his head, and it becomes a touchdown kind of busted coverage. Tua made a terrible throw that was short and kind of late as well. And it feels like when you have a average quarterback who can succeed when the structure is perfect, we tend to just continue to lower the bar more and more. And we point the blame everywhere else but that one specific player. And it does become a kind of infuriating discussion as a sports fan because in the fall, all you hear is Tua Tagovailoa praise when everything's going perfect. But it's when things start to fall apart and there's an expectation for you to rise up to the occasion where he looks pretty much like a game manager. And a month ago, I made a comparison between him and Ryan Tannehill, his predecessor with Miami Dolphins.
I think a good comparison of Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy is Tua Tagovailoa and Ryan Tannehill, where I don't think the difference between Purdy and Garoppolo is substantial. I think it's similar to a Tannehill and a Tua. Tua is the better quarterback, but is it leaps and bounds better? I don't really think so.
I'm sorry.
Is that disrespectful to Tua?
You had to know,
Did you just say that Tannehill and Tua is close right now?
No, I'm
Man,
talking
that
about
is some
like
great
2 years
statistical
ago,
seasons.
Tannehill.
2019 and
Like
2020.
Ryan
pretty
Tannehill.
bad.
And
That's
Drew.
4 years ago.
Drew,
We're
that's
talking
what I'm
4
talking
years
about.
ago.
Ryan
His
Tannehill,
career year is 30-10, and Tua is about to eclipse that next week.
Yeah, I know.
Respect the tribal chief.
What I'm telling you is that Tua is a tier above Ryan Tannehill, but he's not 2 tiers above him. And I think
Multiple.
he's not multiple.
No,
I
he's
He
think
got
not
benched.
multiple.
He got benched for Will Levis, a rookie.
The Titans situation right now is god awful. It's not a good situation. When the Titans had a great situation, when they had AJ Brown, Corey Davis,
Oh
Derrick Henry
no, they
playing at
have
the top
DeAndre
level.
Hopkins. They have Treylon Burks.
What,
True.
bro? This offense is not that
Was he
good.
top
It's not.
20?
The point is that when Ryan Tannehill had AJ Brown, when he had Arthur Smith as a play caller, when he had Derrick Henry and Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith was playing well. Ryan Tannehill has a top 10 statistical efficiency year in the last decade.
And at that point in time, a lot of Dolphin fans who defend Tua Tagovailoa like it's a part-time job took it personally. Though Ryan Tannehill went to an AFC Championship game and has had pretty damn good seasons when everything was perfect, playing at a higher level when it actually matters. What makes Tua Tagovailoa a better quarterback than Ryan Tannehill if he can't play well after November? Because that is when elite quarterbacks or really good quarterbacks are established, when you're playing the best teams. And now from the Miami Dolphins, if we have to make every excuse for Tua Tagovailoa, we can't pay him $30 million. Otherwise, he's not going to have Raheem Mostert. He's not going to get to keep Jalen Waddle. And the offense line is always going to be average at best and dealing with injuries. And in that case, the excuses will stockpile up until it's a sob story like it is Daniel Jones in New York. He has nothing. Oh, he only has Brian Dable, Saquon Barkley, the best left tackle in football, and receivers who consistently get open. And now this is a side tangent, because I feel like with Tua Tagovailoa, it's a similar story to Daniel Jones, where we're consistently, let's be honest, giving him every excuse under the sun. Whereas with elite quarterbacks, we don't tend to blame Gabriel Davis for those 4 drops on huge touchdown-worthy plays. So for a Dolphin franchise which has not won a playoff game in the last 23 years, you've built a fantastic team which is super well coached, especially on the offense side of the ball. I mean, the defense with Vic Fangio did a fantastic job versus Kansas City, holding them to 1-4 in the red zone in the first half. It was a 16-7 game in spite of their offense looking like they didn't want to play in the first half. And even still, with the Dolphins defense stepping up with none of their edge rushers, it was their offense which failed them. They've got a quarterback good enough to win you the division, 12 games, have a top 5 offense in points per game, but you do not trust them to go on a playoff run because the odds are they're going to be the number one reason you're held back from reaching your goal. They have limitations, everything has to be perfect, and they're probably going to be paid a good amount of money, which puts even more pressure on them to be a player they're probably not. A lot of teams find themselves in this spot, and I can't help but feel bad a little bit for Tua because he's gone through a lot to get to this point, and it makes him a very endearing person. Like we highlighted before, his hip injury, Julius Randle's stress fracture as a rookie in his first ever NBA game, overcoming those injuries to become Pro Bowl caliber, all NBA player in Randle's case, is something that should be celebrated. And right as you're about to throw a party, it leaves a sour taste in your mouth when that player completely disintegrates in the biggest moments. It'd be one thing if Tua's struggles versus the Chiefs was a isolated game. He played awful in December. The loss versus the Ravens, getting blown out by 40 points nearly, blowing a multi-possession lead to the Titans, falling short to the Bills. It's a tough day to be a Miami Dolphin fan, but I think it is important you're honest. You have to look to upgrade the quarterback situation, appreciating Tua for the floor he can bring you as a team. But he can only take you so far. And if you want to become a top 2 team in the AFC, one that can compete with Kansas City on their best day, it's not the result with Tua Tagovailoa's down performances. It's the loyalty to a player when it's better off for both sides to probably look to move forward without one another.